This was a pretty good patch. They made a lot of good changes, but hey, would you look at that? Samira is still really broken. What's going on, ProGuides family, and welcome back to our channel. My name is Nathan Ng, and I'll be your host for another high ELO tier list. As always, we're going to be running you guys through all of the changes from this patch and also provide you with the tier list for every single role. This series is focused more on the platinum and higher player base, but feel free to stay for the ride regardless of your rank. I'm sure all of you guys are curious about what champions might be stronger in high ELO as opposed to low ELO, and we're all about inclusiveness and love all you guys regardless of your ELO unless you're iron. We love irons the most. You are more than just your rank border, remember that. Alright, it's about time to start this video, so let me go ahead and tell you guys that if you're trying to make that last minute climb to hit whatever rank that you're aiming for, go ahead and head over to ProGuides.com. We've got a ton of content there, including classes, coaches, and even VOD reviews, so make sure to check that out. For our question of the day, what champion do you think would be the hardest to ever get a pentakill with? I'm definitely thinking it's probably got to be some sort of support champion. In my opinion, maybe Nautilus. Though I have seen it done, but it was in an ARAM by my friend Frank, and they dove him under tower. So yeah, very unlikely. Not to be some sort of casual, but I think ARAM is the only thing I play nowadays. It's the only thing I have fun in, you know? Anyway, with that all being said, let us know your answers in the comments down below. We're going to be beginning with the top lane. Alright, so this is a really big one in the top lane. I'm sure that you are all aware that there was only one real balance change up in the top lane, and that was to Camille. Although she might not have been a big deal in lower mid ELO, high ELO players have known for several months that Camille had the sauce. That may not be exactly the right word, but what I'm trying to tell you is that, she's the Szechuan sauce of McDonald's. Her attack speed bonus on E was reduced from 40 to 80% based on the ability level to 40 to 60%. The issue playing against the Camille is that with her optimal loadout, her laning is simply too powerful. Great Camille players are so hard to play against in the top lane. She has her passive shield, true damage ability and mobility with her Q, incredible engage range with her E, and some sustain and poke with her W as well. In the hands of a better player, Camille has all of the necessary tools to outplay her opponents, and high ELO top laners have always wanted to see some changes for her quite a while now. This nerf leaves her powerful early to mid game in place, but at least makes it so that she isn't as much of a late game powerhouse as before. The final verdict is that Camille isn't OP anymore, but is a very formidable top laner still worthy of an S tier. One notable change about this nerf is that Camille isn't performing as well against top laners like Darius, who spike in the mid game as a result. Her win rates on her most common matchups, Jax, Renekton, and Fiora, have all dropped slightly, and while her win rate against Darius has dropped by nearly a whole %. With that all being said, our OP picks for this patch in the top lane are now just Darius and Fiora, with Camille out of the way. The strong competitors in the S tier are now Camille, Shen, Wukong, Jax, Hecarim, and Urgot. Alright, next up, let's run through the jungle. There were so many jungle changes and the meta has shifted ever so slightly as a result, so let's go ahead and get right into it. The first jungler that we're going to be talking about is Hecarim. Regardless of ELO, Hecarim has been a solo queue menace for quite a while now. The base damage on his E was reduced from 45 to 165 to 35 to 155 this patch. Also, the max base damage was decreased from 90 to 330 to 70 to 310. This nerf has resulted in Hecarim's win rate dropping nearly a whole %. While he was an incredible S tier pick who had no worries about his spot there, he's potentially a nerf away from needing to start worrying. Hecarim is very reliant on picking up those early skirmishes, victories for free ganks to get on the board. Losing some early burst damage means that players have more time to react and potentially kite him out. Even though Hecarim is considered a pretty fast champion, once he expands his E and his ultimate, all he's got left to hunt you down is Summer Ghost if he's running it as well as Smite. In cases where you manage to survive even with a little bit of health, Hecarim is now forced to extend himself just a little bit further to find those takedowns, meaning that the players need to take more risks. Naturally, this means that things go wrong every once in a while as well, which also means that you can quite literally speed int. The time has finally come, and so many high ELO players were so very happy with the fact that Graves was nerfed this patch. The armor that he received on each stack of his E was reduced from 8 to 20 to 6 to 18. While his damage remains the same, he's noticeably squishier and doesn't really feel like a solid brick anymore. There are definitely some cracks that you can exploit and then break through. Graves' win rate has also dropped a little bit less than 1% as a result of this nerf. He's crossed the 50% mark and now sits a little bit right below it, to dismay of some as well as the joy of others. There are two kinds of high ELO junglers, ones that like Graves and ones that don't. I'll let you in on a little secret and tell you that it's usually the ones who like him that play him. Now that Graves is a little bit less tankier than before, aggressive junglers now have a chance to win duels against him, as he also ends jungle clears a little bit less healthy than before as well. You know how everybody memes 380 nerfs and buffs? I'm gonna say you guys should trust Riot a little bit more. Not too much more, but a little bit more. Nidalee's base damage was reduced from 61 to 58, and she feels a lot more controllable in the elite levels of play as a result. In Diamond 2 and higher, this minor nerf actually caused her win rate to drop 2%. This is probably due to a lower sample size of games this patch, but it's within reason to say that by the end of this patch, it'll level out to almost 1% drop instead. Nidalee's high-tempo, aggressive gameplay leaves very little breathing room for junglers that just want to farm up and hit power spikes. The loss of 380 slows down Nidalee's jungle clears and also makes it a little bit harder to win skirmishes, where the outcomes are easily decided by basic attacks as well as abilities. We moved Nidalee down to the B tier as a result. She's still okay in elite levels of play, but it's clear that in general there are still some safer picks to pounce on. While we were initially really excited about the Trundle buffs, they've actually flopped quite a bit in high elo. We can't really blame Riot though, because when Trundle's OP, it's really annoying. His passive healing was from 2 to 6% at specific levels to 2 to 7% with linear scaling. Also, his W's cooldown was reduced from 15 flat to 15 to 11 based on ability level. While this seemed like a pretty big buff, it hasn't really made a difference in high elo. His win rate went up, sure, but not by much. This buff did generally increase his overall win rate by a little more than a whole percent, and he's just sitting a little higher than 50% win rate overall. In other words, this buff got the job done for most players, but it isn't enough for him to find success in high elo yet, so we'll be leaving Trundle in the B tier as a result. Lee Sin was buffed this patch, and high elo players are doing their best to bring him back. His attack damage per level was increased from 3.2 to 3.7. As one of the most stylish champions in the game, high elo players love playing this guy and just popping off. His win rates have increased by almost a whole percent in Platinum and higher. Things are looking good, and maybe we'll be seeing him making a full comeback soon. However, he's still underperforming just a little bit, so we'll be leaving him in the B tier for now. Udyr got a buff this patch. The crazy thing about Udyr is that his play rate is so low that we can't really get an accurate read on his data. Back on patch 10.19, he got buffed and his win rate actually dropped as a result. I guess Trick 2G wasn't doing so well. Nevertheless, we know that Udyr is objectively stronger this time around. Udyr's Phoenix Stance pulse damage was increased from 40 to 240 to 50 to 300. This was a pretty massive buff to Phoenix Stance Udyr. He got a ton of damage for free, but he's still struggling in the current state of the game. I mean, they just added Samira, who's literally a hack and slash character into the game when we've got a guy who wears a fur coat and auto attacks. It'll be nice to move up Udyr into the B tier considering the numerous buffs that he just received. After all of them, he's not weak by any means, but he really feels limited in terms of his options when you play him. Our OP picks in this jungle is going to be Evelynn with Graves, Karthus, Kha'Zix, Nunu, Kayn, Rek'Sai, Elise, Fiddlesticks, and Hecarim right behind her in the S tier. Next up, let's run through the mid lane. So let's go ahead and run you through that Corki change. His Q's damage AD ratio was increased from 50 to 70%. Unfortunately, this buff hasn't led to any significant changes for him. His win rate in Diamond 2 and higher went up about 0.5%, but he's still failing to find the amount of success that he needs to improve to move up in the tier list. Corki feels a little bit underwhelming because you have to sacrifice a lot of early game pressure to commit to him as a pick. Usually this leads to teams falling behind and games can easily end before Corki even scales up to full power. But with that being said, we have a few changes to note in the mid lane. Our OP picks have changed up quite a bit this round as Fizz, as expected, has been popping off. Following some nerfs to casting in the last patch, Fizz has been swimming freely through the mid lane and dominating Summoner's Rift in high elo. He's been making a huge splash, so we've gone ahead and denoted him along with Zed as our OP picks for this patch. They're followed up by Talon, Diana, Vladimir, Yone, Katarina, Karthus, Galio, and Ahri in the S tier. So let's go ahead and talk about the bottom lane. Of course, we've got a Samira nerf. Her E's cooldown was increased from 15 to 11 to 20 to 12, while the attack speed bonus was reduced from 30 to 50% to 20 to 40%. Needless to say, I didn't even know her E gave her attack speed. I think I've been playing way too much ARAM. Samira's ban rate in high elo is still 75%. She has an acceptable pick rate, but with a 75% ban rate, it's clear that she's being hindered. If players get their hands on her, they'd lock her in every single game, no questions asked. I mean, I get it, she's also a really fun champion to play, but with her E's cooldown being increased, does it even matter if it resets on kills? Samira's self-sufficient kit feels a little bit overloaded right now, and in the hands of a great player, she's able to take over games by herself and basically 1v9. Samira is mobile, dealing insane amount of damage, and is also an incredible playmaker with her ability to break down incoming projectiles with her W. In spite of this nerf, she's still an amazing pick, and we'll leave her denoted as our OP bottom lane pick. My boy Aphelios received a number of buffs this patch to his ultimate. Severum's healing was increased from 200 to 400 to 250 to 500. Crescendum's chakrams from 3 to 4. Calibrum's R mark was also increased from 20 to 70 to 40 to 100. Infernum's damage was increased to 75% to 85%, and Gravitum's R root duration went up from 1 second to 1.25 seconds. On top of all of this, the lethality stat bonus that he received was also increased from 2 to 12 to 3 to 18. This wasn't the biggest buff, but it was a buff nonetheless. His ultimate has much more power behind it now, but because this was the majority of this buff, he's only stronger when it's off cooldown. While he does have a little bit more lethality than last patch, the damage increase isn't a huge one. We'll actually go ahead and just readjust our tier list as he's been seeing a ton more play this patch. With more games, we have a better understanding of how strong he is, and we're going to be moving Aphelios down to the A tier. One final adjustment that we made is that we moved Jhin up to the S tier. With various lane bullies cycling out, Jhin is finding some success as he's got an incredible early game. His abilities as well as basic attacks deal a ton of damage, as he's not the fastest attacker, short and bursty traits are basically intended to go in his favor, and thus he's able to win lane against a variety of bot laners. With some early game dominance, Jhin players have been snowballing leads into victories, and we see him sport some incredible statistics and high ELO. Thus our OP picks in the bottom lane is Samira, followed by Caitlyn, Senna, Draven, Ashe, the Lux and Sona duo, Miss Fortune, and Jhin in the S tier. So let's go ahead and wrap things up with the supports. First up is Pantheon. Riot and I guess the collective community decided that they don't like him as a support, so they've gone ahead and nerfed him. Pantheon's Q damage was readjusted from 75 to 215 plus 100% of his bonus AD to 70 to 190 plus 115% of his bonus AD. His Q's Mortal Will bonus damage was also changed from 100 to 115%. The intent was very clear. Support Pantheon with the lack of his AD early on should end up weaker, while solo lane Pantheon should remain around the same power level. This change has definitely yielded some results, and we've noticed Pantheon's win rate drop across basically every single rank. In elite play, he's still sitting above the 50% mark, so at the very least, he's an above average pick still. With this nerf, he doesn't feel as strong as last patch, so we moved him down to the A tier. The final change was to Karma. First, her mantra cooldown refund with abilities changed from 2, 3, or 4 at levels 1, 7, and 11 to 2, 3.5, and 5 seconds at level 1, 6, and 11. Her refund on basic attacks was changed from 1 to 2 based on the level to a flat 1 at all stages of the game. Finally, her R's cooldown was reduced from 45 to 36 seconds to 40 to 34 seconds. Overall, this was a huge buff to Karma, and she's now further rewarded for successfully landing her abilities. At the same time, constantly harassing with auto attacks isn't going to yield the same refund as before, which means that solo lane Karma ends up a bit weaker. However, the flat cooldown reduction on her mantra charge definitely means that this is still an increase in power. While she's stronger than before, Karma is still struggling in high ELO, and we'll be leaving her in the C tier. Thus, our S tier picks for supports are Senna, Lulu, Thresh, Leona, Blitzcrank, Janna, Bard, and Morgana. With all that being said, that concludes our patch 10.21 high ELO tier list video. Like always, feel free to subscribe and check out ProGuides.com because we're always dedicated to helping you guys improve. Make sure to connect with us so you don't really miss any of our informational content. Good luck grinding, summoners, and I hope that you see the victory screen way more often as you're headed towards the end of the season. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.